Hello, my name is Katie O'Brien and I work as a research scientist for Millipore Sigma. Today I'm going to be doing the two-step coupling method where I conjugate an antibody to our Estapor red latex microspheres. I'll be using this protocol, Microsphere Coupling, two-step EDC SULFO NHS conjugation coupling procedure. The Estapor microspheres that I am going to use today are the red latex 300 nanometer in size. Some buffers that you'll need for your conjugation: a blocking buffer, an MES activation buffer, you'll need ethanolamine, you'll need your antibody that you are intending to conjugate onto your microspheres, some equipment that you'll need: the rotary wheel, the vortex, a centrifuge, and also a sonicator, either a water bath sonicator or a probe sonicator. And of course, you'll also need your EDC and your SULFO NHS, which are refrigerated. Okay, so this is the Microsphere Coupling protocol that's available online for all our IVD manufacturer customers. It's a two-step EDC SULFO NHS covalent coupling method. For the purpose of this video, we're going to use the Estapor red latex microspheres, 300 nanometer diameter. I'm going to take 100 microliters of the microspheres. But before I take the aliquot that I need for the protocol, I want to make sure that the beads are well mixed, invert it a few times, vortex it for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to sonicate the microspheres as well. So to perform the sonication of your microspheres, you can use one of either two methods. You can use a water bath sonicator or a probe sonicator. I'm going to use the probe sonicator for the purpose of this video. It's always important to make sure that the probe is clean and sterile before putting it into your microspheres. About 10 seconds is more than enough time to sonicate your microspheres. So once your microspheres are sonicated, take 100 microliters. When your microspheres are at 10%, it's 100 microliters. And pipette the microspheres into a 2 ml low protein binding tube. So you want to add 1 ml of this activation buffer to your 100 microliters of microspheres. You can mix up and down a few times. And now you want to centrifuge the microspheres using 14,000 RPM for 7 minutes. So now you want to centrifuge your microspheres, putting in your balance on one side and your microspheres on the other. And now we're going to repeat the spin again for 7 minutes. So we decant the supernatant. Very careful not to disturb the microspheres that have settled on the bottom of the tube. Now we're going to wash the microspheres again. So the same thing again, add 1 ml of activation buffer. And this time, pipette up and down to mix the beads in the buffer. If you're worried that the microspheres have become too aggregated, you could give them a vortex or even a quick sonication again wouldn't do them any harm. So once they're well mixed in the buffer, we spin them again in the centrifuge at the same speed, 14,000 RPM for 7 minutes. So 7 minutes later, remove the tube from the centrifuge and you'll see that the microspheres have settled to the bottom, leaving a clear supernatant on top, and the supernatant you will decant very carefully, ensuring that you do not disturb the microspheres on the bottom. And now we're going to wash the microspheres again, taking another 1 ml of activation buffer and pipetting the microspheres up and down. If they're quite stuck to the side of the tube, you can use the vortex and the sonicator. So the beads are still a bit stuck to the side. So I'm going to use the sonicator. Now the beads are well suspended in the wash buffer or the activation buffer. Always remember to clean the probe every time you're finished using it. Another spin for 7 minutes at 14,000 RPM. So on the last wash of your microspheres, on your third wash, you can now remove your EDC from the -20 freezer, and you can remove your SULFO NHS from the 4 degrees fridge. And this is the EDC and the SULFO. And you can just leave them on the bench while you go to the centrifuge to remove your microspheres. And for the last time, remove the supernatant, decant the supernatant. Being very careful that you don't disturb the microspheres. And once again, add 1 ml of activation buffer. Mixing up and down. After the last wash, it's very important at this stage that the microspheres are well mixed and they're not aggregated or stuck together. So definitely at this stage do a vortex and a sonication. So now your microspheres are well resuspended. So you can place them to the side for a few minutes while you prepare your EDC and your SULFO NHS solution. This is what I've just prepared. 500 microliters of EDC and 500 microliters of SULFO NHS. And as the protocol shows, the EDC is made up in milli-Q water and the SULFO NHS is made up in the activation buffer that we've been using to wash our microspheres. Right, we've got 24 microliters of EDC. Going into the microspheres. And we need 240. Of SULFO NHS. So once the EDC and the SULFO NHS have been added, give them a quick mix on the vortex, place on the rotary wheel for 30 minutes at room temperature. Okay, so this is 30 minutes later. Take your sample off and spin again at 14,000 RPM for 7 minutes. And we'll be doing this wash 3 times, the same way as before, every time washing the microspheres with the activation buffer. So this is the last of the washes. And we removed the supernatant again. And now we're going to add 700 microliters of activation buffer. Be sure to mix up and down really well at this point, because the next step of the protocol is to add the antibody. And you want to make sure that there's no aggregation of your microspheres when your antibody is added. It's important to do a sonication. I can do a vortex as well, but definitely do the sonication. And now it's time to add 300 microliters of antibody, and the antibody has been diluted to 2 milligrams per mil. A quick vortex. Take out 300 microliters. Mix it up and down. with your microspheres. And now it goes onto this rotary wheel for 2.5 hours. So after the 2.5 hours on the rotary wheel, you're adding 30 microliters of ethanolamine, which should be added in the fume hood. After you've added 30 microliters of ethanolamine, vortex your microspheres, place on the rotary wheel for another 30 minutes at room temperature. So after 30 minutes, remove your tube from the rotary wheel and place in the centrifuge again at 14,000 RPM for 7 minutes at room temperature. This is our third wash in blocking buffer. So decant the supernatant. Once again, being careful not to disturb the microspheres on the bottom. Once again, add 1 ml of fresh blocking buffer. I'm going to sonicate and vortex. Now we have at the very end 1 ml solution of conjugated microspheres at 1%, ready to use in your lateral flow test strips.